Hi, today we are talking about the Industrial Color Pigments palette by ISAMAYA. She is a famous makeup artist and also creative director for important brands, but she recently came out with her own brand that to me reminds me of the early Pat McGrath, in the sense that like Pat McGrath in 2015 and 2016, today ISAMAYA is proposing us limited edition collections. Like this one. This is called Industrial Color Pigments. The palette is made in Italy. I'm in Italy, but the funny thing is that I had to import it from US. To buy this, I spent much more than a Pat McGrath Mothership palette. Was it worth it? I have some thoughts, and stay tuned. In the end, I will tell you my final thoughts and if it is worth it. This is the packaging, quite, weird. There's this extruded figure coming from the palette. Difficult to store. It looks cheaper than I expected. This is plastic. It's not easy to open. The palette itself, the mechanism to open it, looks cheap in my opinion, and this figure is very nice, honestly. I thought to remove it, but actually it's the best part of the palette. The plastic is cheap. The inside is much more interesting, and as you can see, I have used it, and I'm not blessed with natural light, so we have to go with the LED light that is here. So, and that LED light will show up better the reflects of these eyeshadows. In a nutshell, the problem is the performance of the eyeshadows. How do they translate on the eyes? Underwhelming, wide applied on the eyes. So let's go through these colors. This was the most surprising one because I was pretty sure I wouldn't like it. But actually it's one of my favorite colors. As you can see, the textures are fine, but there's something like they look sheer on the eyes, so they apply sheerly, like a bunch of glitters, like condensed glitters. That is how I feel this palette is full of toppers, with sometimes with a base, but they are mostly toppers. I don't like to get full looks out of this palette because for me it's too glittery. It's not shimmer, it is really glittery, chunkier than I expected. And this gives this palette an artistic quality, but I would have liked something with these colors, but smoother. Still, I don't feel to declutter this palette, first of all because I spent so much money on that. I want to enjoy it better, but also because I think this gives a touch of uniqueness to smooth shades that can be flat. So for me, this is a companion palette, and I see this to be paired with the Pat McGrath Decadence palette because that one lacks sparkles, it's more smooth metallics, while this is just the opposite. As you can see, sometimes they look like art pen, but I can pick them up with a brush without problems. So this is one of my favorite shades because it looks burnt orange, but since it turns out to be sheer on the eyes like this, it became one of my favorite. It gives a bit of warmth to a color story that otherwise it would have been cool toned. I was trying to cover this color, and without this color, without that orange, that is not the orange, is a peach, and it's complementary to the green, and so it pops up. It is perfect layered on top of the other colors. So this was a surprise, and I would say this can be a glittery version of one of my favorite shades in my collection ever, that is Inferno in the Decadence palette. Let me pick that shade. Here we have it, Inferno. So it's like a bronzed, a darker version, smoother and darker version. This is on focus. So this ISAMAYA shade, it doesn't have the taupish base of Inferno. That is the feature that makes me love this shade, but still it has the same reflects, So these pair very well together. This is my favorite shade of the palette because it's a cool tone purple. It's a bluish purple. It reminds me of Cleona's texture. So it's very similar to the Cleona Iridescent Multichromes from the Stained Glass collection. But it doesn't have the multichrome quality. It's just a duochrome. It disappears almost and then you see the reflects. And compared to UV from Cleona, this is more cool toned, so more bluish, while the Cleona one is pink purple. We will go through the greens, but first of all, let's talk about these shades. So this is meant to be a blue. I think you can detect the blue reflects, while this one is a black. As you can see, I haven't used it. These are hard shade, but they pick sheerly. So it's a sheer black that can be built up, and it's the squishy formula that was proposed by MAC years ago, a few years ago. It's innovative, but these are indistinguishable on the eyes. So this is more a standard matte. This should have bluish shimmers, but they do not translate on the skin, as you can see. Yeah, there's a bit of bluish, but you really can't tell once applied on the eyes. So this was actually a waste of space. One would have been enough. This would have been more interesting, and this, until now, I haven't found a reason for this to stay in this palette, honestly. With the greens, I have a few problems. Let me talk about it. So this is a normal green, nothing to say about it. It's interesting. I like Inferno from Pat McGrath. It has a darker base with these grass green reflects. This is, yeah, a very nice shade. You see how sheer it is. I mean, you don't get this effect on the eyes, and I like it because of this. This, I think, makes the palette unique, but on the other hand, it's not what you expect sometimes, and it's full of particles. You see these scattered particles, how is different from this smooth shade from Pat McGrath. So here you can see the difference, and you have to be into sheer makeup, or you have to be used to layering or used to that kind of makeup. But this is very nice because it can become mermaid looking shade. So I would say this is more for makeup artists, and I'm excited because of that. This makes the palette unique, but do not expect the impact of the shades like this Pat McGrath palette, where you pick a shade and you have full opacity even if there's glitter. Let me do a side-by-side comparison of these two. You see how more impactful is the Pat McGrath, and how more fine and sheer is the ISAMAYA. So this is full opaque, and this should be layered to have more impact. Yeah. That's why this can be a bit underwhelming sometimes, because maybe you expect a Pat McGrath effect, but you get something else. But I believe it's not fair to do these comparisons, because every makeup artist has a style, and I really appreciate sheer makeup. The point is that sometimes the whole palette is glittery, and for that reason I would have liked to get some shades like these ones to be more, opaque and metallic, have a more mixture of shades, but I don't see that textural difference. They are all glittery with different size of glitters, but to me they are quite the same. I would have expected more textural variation. That's what I meant to say. Let's go further with the color analysis. Let's compare the greens. So I started with this one, that is this one. Then let's go for the other light one. This is my least favorite because, okay, this is more opaque. And personally, I don't like this shade of green. It's too bright, too light, not my jam. I much prefer this one that is sheer. I can darken up with a dark base or bronze base. Let's compare this one, and this one. So this one is my kind of shade. The problem is on the eyes, I see a lot of this gray base, and you see these scattered glitters, golden glitters. So it's more glitters suspended on a darker base, and I don't get that bronze uniformity, that I see in the pan. Then we have this shade that is warmer. Sheer and warm. Let me focus better. Yeah, here it seems like a sheer is, you see, you get glitters and the base is warmer and lighter than this and sheer. So that's why I'm a bit underwhelmed by these two shades. And then let's go to this one that is a fantastic antique gold. Yeah, this is a bit better because it's more, opaque rather than these two. These were let down, to be honest. And this is a bit lighter than it shows in the pan. I miss that burnt, that cool tone burnt effect that I see in the pan. I want to show you the pans and the swatches. So the point is that this one is a bit too cool toned. It's a greenish gray on the eyes with these scattered sparkles. This is a bit underperforming because it's sheer, as you can see. And this is a bit too light, and I miss that brownish, burnt, grungy effect. I miss it here, but it is unique. And then we have a warm brown that, is a warm brown with, again, scattered golden particles. I put it here. So the greens are here. This is the orange. This is the bronze. It's nice, but again, what I see is scattered glitters on a sheer base. Finally, we have these glossy shades. So these are meant to have, a wet effect and more subtle shimmers. And then we have two with chunkier shimmers. They're this one and this one. So the final two, let me see where I should swatch them. I'll swatch them here. Is this one. You see, it's almost invisible. This is very nice, but sometimes I get that cheap looking drugstore effect with this one, because as you can see, it's just sparkles without any base. And this one is, again, a sheer wash of color, but it's too sheer. Some green sparkles, but let me put it next to the greens here. Guys, I don't get performance from this. You see, it's almost invisible. So yeah, this is a dud in my opinion. Finally, the last two shades. This one, you see how underwhelming it is compared to the pen here. And this one, that is something that honestly this I haven't used yet, but this is more satisfying. I mean, with this one, having this one, why should I get this other one? Let me do a comparison between these two. So this one is this shade that has finer particles, and this one is the chunkier one, the taupey chunky shade, and then this one is this that should be as chunky as this one, but with a dark base. This is amazing, honestly. So let's put everything here. Okay, this is again this glossy shade, and these two are the more sparkly colors. But again, what I get here is not a variety of formulas, is more like the same formula with the different sizes of particles, and that's what I don't like. This moreover doesn't have that darkness of the pen. It's too light. It seems a straight aluminum shade, without that grunginess, that dark taupe base that I would have liked, that I would expect by looking at this pen. So all in all, I have mixed feelings about this palette. I like some shades, so like this too, but this, as I said, is underwhelming on the eyes. And to me, this is not at the same level of a Pat McGrath palette, although it had a lot of potential, because this potentially is one of my favorite color story. It maybe is the color story of the year, is the best palette in terms of color story. The problem is the formulation. This was totally unnecessary because it was so underperforming. These two were too similar. Also these two, this is not my favorite. This one is another dud. And yeah, it's unfortunate because this may be one of my favorite colors. So all in all, I like some things of this palette. I will keep this palette because it inspires me to experiment, but I always get something that is different from what I anticipated. And all in all, I have to say this is too glittery. The glitters fall down, nothing remarkable in the formula. So it's a weird palette. You really have to study the shade beforehand to get the result, the effect you want. I can't anticipate the look that I would get from some colors just looking at the pens, because they translate differently from what they look like. So I have to say that, yeah, go for a Pat McGrath instead. I hope this was helpful and see you in next video. Bye bye.